Oh, yeah, there's... See how many whacks it takes to get all the way through. Yeah, it can do it. I mean, down here in the curve, it's not bad, but you get up here, it's a little bit more awkward just because I'm having to move more blade, but on the ball, I hit that on the same spot. Let me hit it next to it. Yeah, that is definitely a hatchet. You can see that wood split about halfway down. That was disturbing. The Nepal-made Kukri spring steel, right? Now, this is the first time I've taken this one out and used it for anything. And you saw me, I chopped on some press board and I chopped on some, some firewood a little bit. I don't consider any of that abusive considering the design of this knife, but the gunk came off of it easily, and there is zero edge damage except for, let me see if you can see it, right there, right there. Flip it over. See if I can get it on camera. Oh yeah, right there. Oh, hang on, right there. You see it? That's a crack. Hi. Several months ago, I did a series of videos on kukri, starting with my ancient cheapo tourist kukri that I got way back in the 70s from Tang's Imports for pretty much nothing, and how well it held up over the decades, and then some that I'd acquired recently made in Nepal that are arguably tourist-style kukri, and we'll talk about that subject again a little bit today. And I told you I was going to try to get some more, but you'll notice those kukri reviews kind of dried up after I did the comparative review of the Ka-Bar Combat Kukri. Now, quick recap of that video. This knife performed pretty well. Do I think it performed in any way significantly superior to the Becker I put it up against? Not really. It's just a different style of knife if you happen to like it, but I was pretty impressed with it. But I also compared it to a similar sized Nepal made, and again we can argue whether this is a tourist style kukri or not. And I never tested this kukri before, and well, let's say things went disturbingly sideways. And that kind of shook my confidence in, well, this knife and some of its brethren. So I figured I'd get back around to it, talk about how bad the damage it suffered was, what I was able to do about it, how it's performed since, and just give you kind of a review of this knife. This is a GK&CO. They advertise this as the police model. I'll talk about why I bought it, what I like about it, what I'm not so crazy about, and, well, we got to talk about the crack. So let's get into it. Alright, some more quick recaps. I don't want to make this terribly long. But the first new manufacturer, newly made kukri that I got from Nepal was the 12-inch 3-chira Beast. And you can refer back to the video on it. Beast is a great name for it because it's 2 pounds 1 ounce. Massive heavy chopper. And I put it to that use for chopping and demolition. Did a really great job of that and held up really well. Also, I put it to use as a training tool. Given the weight and the balance and the kind of willow leaf dowel shape of the grip, it's a great analog for a sword to move around because it's only got a 12-inch blade in some pretty confined spaces safely. So yeah, great training tool. But not, shall we say, the most friendly weight for carrying around with you. So I wanted to go a little bit smaller, a little bit handier. So the next one I picked up, and you can refer back to the review on this one, the Service No. 1 Parade style, so nice and shiny, Kukri. Now this one has a 10-inch blade and weighs 19 ounces. So, significantly lighter, but still pretty beefy. Now this one arguably falls into that new tourist overbuilt class because it has a 3/8-inch spine, and instead of a nice smooth tapered apple seed down to the edge, it's got these big flat slab sides and then this sharp angular bevel, which creates about a 30-something degree edge. It's sharp, but it's not thin, and you can look at some of the tests I did in that Ka-Bar comparison video. Knives of this shape and profile, great for chopping in certain ways, but meet a lot of resistance going through certain materials. Again, much more like a hatchet than a knife or a machete. Now this one has the horn grip. It's the rat tail construction that's peened through the end, and these are traditional and they're pretty sturdy. This has held up pretty well. Horn grip, which is a kind of a coveted traditional feature, this originally came with a slick lacquer coating, made it really hard to hang on to this knife. So I did strip that off and give it kind of a satin finish, improve the grip. It's still a bit slippy, and I like the rosewood grip on the beast better. So I figured, okay, 19 ounces, kind of a slick grip. What if I went down one size and something with a rosewood grip? And what fit that description was what's known as the police model, which is supposedly issued to the Nepalese security forces. So their special police knife. Now, one of the signature features of it to look at is it has, instead of that kind of plain diamond peen cap on the end, the butt cap has a kind of really cool crossed kukri design. So it's kind of an interesting little touch on it, gives it some character. Rosewood grip. Now, interesting thing is this rosewood grip is actually longer and, well, me waving them around. I'll show you some side-by-side comparison pictures. That'll make it a little bit easier to see. It's stouter, but also about half an inch longer than this parade model. And yeah, the rosewood does make it grippier, and it's also thicker. It's more hand-filling, more of a palm swell. So it feels really, really good in the hand. So that's a good start. Now the blade. They advertise the blade as, well, it's a 9-inch blade. Weight, 16 inches. So that reduction of an inch takes 3 ounces off of it. Yeah, it makes the knife a lot more, well, handleable. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot easier in the hand. It's just between the grip and the weight and the length, it just felt great. This was very, very promising. Now, yes, this is another GK&CO, what I would consider an entry-level kukri. Since I didn't know what I was going to like, you know how Mike is. He goes cheap until he's confident. Didn't want to invest $150, $200 in a really nice version until I had a sense of what specs I like the best. So take that into consideration. I got this for 70 bucks. It does have that same tourist kind of 3/8-inch spine, a flat slab sides, and we'll take a look at what, well, the repairs I had to make to it here in a second. It's supposed to have a thicker belly and a lot more curve forward, and again, I'll show you some pictures side by side, but it's really not significant as compared to the other one. Yes, you have an extra inch of length on the parade version, but then a shorter handle, so overall lengths are very similar between these things. It's just where you're gripping it's a little bit different because, yeah, and the balance and, of course, the weight. Now, had good luck with my tests of the previous two kukri, so I had, I didn't have any reason to doubt this one until I did that Ka-Bar comparison video. So the first time I took it out and I chopped into some press board and some cardboard and some dry firewood, longitudinally, not across the grain even. Yeah, it developed that crack. And, okay, let's talk about the crack and what I had to do to fix it and how that turned out. Okay, if you're wondering what the weird buzzing was at the end of the last video, that was the space heater under the desk coming on, and it was the best take I had, so yeah, I'm just putting it out there. Why do I think this one cracked where and how it did? Well, in my brief and poor research on the almighty internet, the Nepal-made kukri advertise themselves as being differentially hardened. Now, not the same clay tempering as, say, Japanese-style sword. It's more of a torch and trough quenching process that I've seen in certain videos that gives you the harder edge and the softer spine. Now, there was a guy on, I forget if it was one of the knife forums or Reddit or something like that, who analyzed the sample knife in terms of hardness of different zones. And on his sample, the belly here, the primary chopping surface, shall we say, was the hardest part at a 5860 Rockwell. The tip was a little bit softer. You don't want that too brittle, right? And then it got softer as it went into the recurve here. And then, of course, the body and the spine were the softest. Now, shape, profile, edge dynamics, everything of this blade, very similar originally to that Parade version. I did some chopping with the Parade version, didn't have any problem with it. First time I took this one out, I got the crack here. So I think they might have just gone a little overboard with the hardness of that section and made it too brittle. How bad was the crack? Well, I wound up taking about 1/8 of an inch off the blade and nearly a 1/16 inch on the side. Now, while I was at it, I also gave it a very slight apple seating and increased the angle of the edge bevel, well, decreased it actually, from about 30-something degrees down to sub 30 to give it a better cutting edge. Now, did it make much difference in terms of how slicey it is? Well, let's take a look. There's the original, right? Pretty sharp. Haven't had to touch this knife up very much. Again, if I'm cutting through something with resistance, though, like cardboard or wood, yeah, that fat blade's going to get grabbed. Let's try this one. It's a little bit more toothy now, and I could certainly improve it if I really wanted to. But I managed to recover it. Now, how did I do that? Well, I talked about this in previous videos where I have customized, reshaped, recovered, reprofiled knife blades. And I feel like I've got enough experience and a reasonable amount of talent to pull that off and not create an ugly disaster. And yes, I do use power tools. So I have to remind everybody, if they're considering using power tools on a hardened piece of steel, heat is your enemy. Keep a quench tank of cold water right there next to you. Don't electrocute yourself, but keep it handy. And my rule is only a couple of seconds of contact with that fast-moving, high-friction surface at a time into the water. And once that thing is wet, use a wet-dry medium, by the way, on your sanding belts or whatever. You know, don't ruin your equipment. Make sure your power tool is rated for wet-dry, so you don't, yeah. Bad things might happen if it gets a little bit wet. But the idea is once I've got water on the blade, I can actually see it starting to steam when it starts to get hot. The other thing is look for any changes in color in the metal. If it starts to turn like straw colored, especially where it gets thin, it's probably okay, but stop. Stop and cool it right there, preferably before it gets to that point. If it starts turning dark blue, you're probably going to need to remove some steel that you didn't intend to remove because, yeah, that could be bad. And you can look up charts online of different steels and what colors they turn at different tempering degrees and things like that. Not going to get into that here, but keeping it cool and taking my time, reprofiling the edge. Managed to get this a little tiny bit of a hair nick in it still, but I seem to have removed the crack. It's made a knife that's a little bit more grass leaf shaped, a little bit slimmer, a little bit different balance, a little bit different edge dynamic. But I was disappointed, I was frustrated, and I figured the knife was kind of ruined. So after I reprofiled it, I took it out and chopped. I wailed away on some busted furniture and some firewood and whatever else I had. Basically, I tried to break it again. And I didn't. I failed. Now, I still had the same issues of it not being able to penetrate into certain materials because of its thickness, and that issue I was having about it kind of twisting in my hands, depending on what I was hitting and how. So those are still some concerns about this design in general. But again, this is Mike not knowing exactly what he likes in a kukri yet. So going cheap. Bought an entry-level $70 tourist one versus a higher-end one just to kind of get a sense of what I liked, what was good, what was not so good for me before I made the bigger investment. So yeah, it's not an expensive, high-quality knife. It doesn't have the same kind of smooth appleseed profile of some of the better knives you're going to get out there. And I have picked up a couple of more, one more kind of in this vein and one that was a different kind of design. We'll get to those in future videos. But until then, the good and the bad. Like I said, the weight and the length and the rosewood grip, I like this. I was really enthusiastic about this knife, thinking, "Ooh, this is the one for me." It's, you know, and it's got the cool factor, you know, those things going for it. But then, yeah, the way it performed against some of the other knives in the comparative test, and then that failure, it kind of put me off Kukris a little bit. So I'm trying to get my Kukri confidence back, if that makes any sense. So I'll be putting out a couple more videos in the Kukri line. If you have any questions, let's get that conversation going in the comments. Any recommendations? Again, you guys have already given me some excellent recommendations when I'm ready to spend the money for better Kukri, whether it's a new manufacturer or maybe getting an antique one from someplace like Atlanta Cutlery. That sounds like an awesome option right now. But until then, as usual, thanks for watching, following, subscribing, liking the videos, you know, adding to the comments conversation. I love our conversations, and I hope to see you back for, well, whatever happens next.